What we need even more is investment. In a market that develops healthily, grows in an orderly way, where capital expands in a regulated and healthy manner, we advocate value investing and seek to reduce arbitrage activities. However, as long as the market exists, there will always be speculation, and there will always be arbitrage. And our job is to figure out how to remove the froth from the coffee, enjoy the coffee itself, manage arbitrage, and manage speculation. This is the capability that high-level financial regulation should possess. The third point. Looking at the entire market, we must reflect on China's financial sector development. The private equity market is already very large, with a base of roughly 1 to 2 trillion yuan, and it's become a very important force in the national economy. So, our entire industry needs to reflect on this. Since the country has called for opposing the unchecked expansion of capital, and since the country has proposed that we should focus more on real industries, meaning that industrial capital should not just circulate idly within the financial system, then we need to engage in more investment activities. We should pursue value investing and support the development of real industries, rather than simply engaging in arbitrage. In this process, capital must have an underlying logic of orderly expansion. It requires strategic resolve and professionalism, and we can't just rely on the beta of the times. If you treat the beta of the times as your own alpha and profit from it, that's just taking advantage of the dividends of this era. Isn't that what we call following the trend blindly? For example, today everyone advocates developing technology and making chips, so you rush into chips. But looking at the chip companies we've invested in over the past 2 years, I wouldn't say it's a complete mess, but everyone knows how the results turned out. The same goes for new energy. New energy was very hot in the past, but how have investments in new energy performed over the past 2 years? This also includes our STAR market, which started off with great momentum, and the registration-based IPO system began with the STAR market. So, what is the situation of the STAR market now? If you're interested, you can go and do some serious research to see just how much it has dropped. So, all of this is worth our careful reflection, review, and consideration in order to contribute to the healthy and orderly development of China's future venture capital industry and capital markets. It also provides a more scientific and standardized approach to the long-term capacity for shouldering responsibilities. The significance of this market is open for everyone's discussion. A lot of things go unsaid, and everyone disagrees on discussing the true nature behind this phenomenon. The issue, apart from the two arbitrage and application factors, is that there's another factor. In this environment, there are indeed influences from competition and conflict. Now, in the current situation of intense competition, our technology is indeed facing the pressure of being choked off at critical points. We need a large amount of capital investment, and that's indeed true. We want to make up for what we lack, and we've been behind for too long, so it's perfectly normal to try to catch up. Of course, catching up means you have to spend more money, so you'll see a huge influx of capital into the tech industry. Personally, I support this as well. The gap we're facing is just too big, and if we want to catch up, we need more capital, more human resources, and more social resources invested in this environment. In the long run, for the development of the national economy, advancing science and technology is the right path, because science and technology truly are the primary productive forces. I believe this is absolutely correct as well. But with this issue, we can't just use a simple method to solve it, like letting the market handle everything. As I mentioned earlier, it's not just a matter of choosing one or the other. We can't set the development of science and technology against the improvement of people's livelihoods. When I talk about consumption, I actually mean people's livelihoods. Rapid development is actually also about addressing issues related to people's livelihoods. Creating welfare for the people, just like I mentioned earlier about the purpose of life, technology is not the goal. It's just a means. The real goal is people's well-being. So, in this process, we can't have any implicit conditions. We need to develop technology, also consumption. Both should advance together, driven by two forces. So, we must not neglect one for the other. Just because there's so much focus on technology now and more attention is needed for supporting welfare, we shouldn't just keep pushing for technological development alone. That's always been my view. The macro policies implemented by the China Securities Regulatory Commission, such as prioritizing the allocation of resources to technology enterprises, are correct. However, we cannot treat the development of technology enterprises as the sole criterion for the healthy and orderly development of China's capital market. So what about consumer enterprises? Should they not be developed? We can't take away their right to access the capital market simply because consumer enterprises currently aren't under economic or liquidity pressure, and their survival quality and financial statements are basically fine. Who set this as the rule for orderly development? Isn't that using the capital market as a magnifying lens and discriminating against consumer sectors, in fact, discriminating against people's livelihoods? As I've mentioned, this will in turn also hinder the development of consumption in China. Germany is a clear example. Let's look at the example of our real estate enterprises now. The real estate industry can no longer make use of the capital market. Whether direct or indirect financing, they have no capability left, so real estate companies are moving assets off their balance sheets. In reality, you haven't controlled their ability to obtain financing. There are plenty of companies with liabilities exceeding 2 trillion, and 3 or 4 with over 1 trillion. In fact, even if you don't allow them access to the capital market, whether it's direct or indirect financing, it doesn't stop them from taking on massive debt. This is the logic behind real estate development, but it's flawed. There are issues with the pre-sale capital model. This model has problems, and the core issue lies in these underlying mechanisms. So, whether you let them use the capital market or whether banks provide them with development loans, it no longer solves the problem. The core issue is that we need to reflect on the underlying logic, the logic of industrial development, the issue of how we formulate policies. So I want to speak up and call attention to this. For example, the red-yellow light policy introduced by the China Securities Regulatory Commission. The intention was to tilt issuance resources and supporting measures toward tech companies, but now, in reality, this situation no longer exists. Even though it's not explicitly stated, that's how things actually are. Many consumer companies are basically being discouraged from going public. I can understand if you say that liquor companies shouldn't be listed. I can also understand if you say insurance companies shouldn't go public. But for ordinary companies, those making food, beverages, cosmetics, or clothing, food is essential for people. Everyone needs it. Why don't they have the right to access the capital market?